Dimp Digital presents Idle Game Chat.
Cool.
Hello, apps here from Dimp Digital. Welcome to Idle Game Chat. This is Dimp Digital's flagship video game podcast where we take you through the ups and the downs of the video game world. We are here on your favourite podcast app and YouTube, absolutely free. However, if you wish to support this grassroots independent endeavour, you can head over to patreon.com/Dimp Digital and join the community. Hashtag hand in pocket. This time, I'm once again joined by the reigning one-time FGL Grand Prix winner, the resident referee, Logan. How's it going?
Yep, good, as always. Delighted to join you with our coffees first thing to discuss this week's gaming news.
Sounds disingenuous now.
Definitely genuine, and you can't. This is what throws me about disingenuous. Can you be ingenuous? So disingenuous means not true.
Yep.
Are you just genuous? Genuine?
I
I don't know. I never know where to go on the other side of that.
Language ain't my strong point, never has been, nor is maths. Or math. But people get wound up about that these days.
Why can't you have more than one math?
Don't know.
Why is more than one math?
Don't know. What do you think, audience? Math or maths? And then where are you from? Because I think that matters. It feels like if you're American, math is more...
You do math.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't do maths or math anymore. Calculators sorted that out a long time ago. I don't know why we was fucking about with it for so long. Algebra and all that crap. And then with the advent of computers and smartphones, you literally don't need it. And do you know what? I don't even use a calculator now because I don't know how to do the sums on a calculator for percentages. I just ask Google.
Yeah.
It'll fucking tell you. So I've got that lazy, that piece of knowledge that I learnt when I was 13 has been flushed away because it's not required because old Goggle will tell me.
Calculator.net. That's what I do. I go on there and I go, what's the increase from this to that? It goes there. I go, right, thank you.
Well,
next.
You've now got this chat GPT lurking. I don't know if you've seen that, the sort of AI thing that's being plugged into Bing and whatnot. And it's a powerful tool. You could ask that basically anything and it will come out and give a
I reckon that's
reasonable
always been there. I reckon all these like chat rooms that you used to have back in the day were just an early version of ChatGPT. I don't reckon you were ever like matched or anything with randomers. I reckon it's just an AI in the background. Yeah, just some fucking bot.
Might have been.
Everyone.
May well have been. Anyway, Logan did erroneously say that we're going to talk about the gaming news, but actually it's quite light this week. So, yeah. and I have also said out loud that I want to move away from that where possible. So Logan's trying to drag us back into the doldrums of controversy and toxicity, because that's all that seems to be these days. But we've got a good show lined up for you, I believe. I believe we always do. So you should be tuning in and subscribing where you like, whether it's on the Facebook, you can like the page, whether it's on your podcast app, you can subscribe. YouTube. I mean, really, the long-term goal for YouTube is to get that up to 1,000 subscribers, but that's real slow going. Because at that stage, you can monetize it, and then we could make 1 penny per month potentially out of it. So 1 penny is better than no pennies, I say. Anyway, enough of that waffle. Now, the undisputed way to start a podcast is, of course, delay news. And I haven't come up with what the opposite of that is. We're talking about disingenuous, what the opposite of that is. What happens when a game's brought forward? Because that's what I've got to just kick things off today. It's a game that has got a new release date that's sooner than was anticipated or had they communicated. Can we come up with a term now, or do we just take that offline? You know, there's sometimes these calls get where people are just waffling for the sake of it, not resolving things, and you're like, why don't you just go away and sort that out? Is that this situation here?
Yeah, I don't subscribe. Honestly, if anyone ever says, let's take it offline, I just leave the call.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things I'm just like, why? Just say, let's talk about it after.
Yeah.
But I can't really, I mean, what, brought forward news? I don't know. There's no real catchy one word that I can immediately think of.
No, or a little phrase. I'll tell you what, there's someone who sometimes listens, McWomble. He's usually quite good with language. The challenge is for him to come up with a term that's as snappy as delay news for the opposite. And in this case, for the context, Dead Island 2 changes its release date once again. It's now a week earlier. Dambuster Studios revealed that Dead Island 2 will now make its zombie-riddled debut a week earlier than previously announced. This is from Eurogamer. And the new note to make in your diary is 21st of April 2023. And why is that relevant to us? Well, it's in Biff's Fantasy Gaming League Grand Prix team. So he'll be pleased with that. So originally, this was February the 3rd. Then it went to April the 28th. Now it's April the 21st. So that's the diary. I don't know what they've... That doesn't fill me with confidence. It's like, what are you doing over there? You've gone backwards, forwards, backward. Well, this game has also been in development from various studios for nearly a decade now. So...
Just get it out there, innit?
Yeah, maybe it is one of those. But
just get it out there.
For those that are interested, it'll be coming a week earlier, so you may well be happy with that. Bit of housekeeping. Complaints circling that we didn't slag Nintendo off because they've raised their game prices to $70 when Xbox and Phil were called out a week earlier for doing it. Now, it's a good point in many aspects, but as far as my research and knowledge has given me, they actually haven't raised the price in the UK. So we're the same as it was. 60 UK pounds is still the going rate. So it's not gone up to 70 UK pounds. So Tears of the Kingdom you can buy for $59.99 on the store, and that was the same price as Breath of the Wild. So this is one of the rare occasions where the Americans have been stung with a $70 surcharge, an extra $10, and we've been left alone for once.
Well, I mean, it's arguably in the pipeline, because what happens over there usually dollars. But take what you can get.
Yep.
That's all you can do.
If you're interested in Tears of the Kingdom in the UK, I would just recommend just securing it at whatever price it is now, just in case, because you do never know. And Nintendo have come out and said this isn't the case for every single game they release. It will be on a case by case basis. So actually, in some ways, it would be fascinating to track that and see what they deem worthy of this new premium price tag, but not affecting us on these shores here. Fortunately, FGL update, big one this time around because there's been 3 games that have managed to drop and come out. Let's start with Salmon's got 2 of them. So let's start with old Salmon. How do you pronounce this bloody game? Theatrhythm Final Bar Line. Is that right? I don't know. Well, anyway, it's landed in Salmon's Grand Prix team, 87.
Well,
and that's a number 10 pick.
Out is what I would say.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He did say to me that'll score well, and I thought, well, he's probably right, because that is the sort of game that isn't typically given just to any old rookie. That'll go to someone who likes the games. They'll be like, oh, yeah, I like those, thanks. Oh, 9 out of 10, there you go.
Some sort of bias, some might say, but I wouldn't like to throw that sort of mud.
Well, concerning when that comes out, but that's...
Just on that point, I just want to derail it slightly, because I like to do this to you. What do you think is the right thing to do? Like, because when you're reviewing games like that, if you we've talked about this before around horror games. It's like, if you give me a horror game, I ain't going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
But should you give certain games to people that like certain games, because arguably they'd be more favourable? How do you find a neutral, objective ground to getting a game reviewed? Like, what's the? Because it's a tricky one.
It is. Ideally, I mean, look, I know what the answer is. Ideally, you have multiple people that review the same game, and there's a consensus or an average taken. If you're going to do scores, or you just get 2 people in a room to have a chat and do it that way. In the absence of that, given a lot of these sites do use a 10-point scale or 5 stars or whatever, you absolutely should get someone who's a fan of it and someone who's familiar and not familiar. And then ideally, you maybe have a third person in there. But that's a lot of resource and a lot of money.
Goes for a QC.
Well, it's an American site that do it. I think it's Famitsu. I think they have 4 or 5 people that review it and give it they give it a score. I think it's 4 actually. They give it a score out of 10, then it gets a score out of 40.
Yeah.
And it's like, can it get 40 out of 40? And some say suspect.
It kind of gets like either an average or a median score then, rather than a.
But that's the way to do it, isn't it? And in absence of that, I think in the review you have to state, it goes back to why we do Cards on the Table. What's your history? What's your history with the franchise, the developer, the genre? Is there anything relevant to your playthrough? Are you completely new to it? Because I think that's important also, so that someone listening or reading goes, okay, this person's not in the same boat as me. I need to take that into consideration. Or you stumble across someone, they're like, oh, I've never played Theatrhythm Final Bar Line or any of the other games. This guy hasn't either. So this is going to be an interesting litmus test. I think that's important as well. But then how many words they want to waste given their backstory about their gaming history? Probably not. But that's the advantage of doing podcasting, is there's no real time limit. You can just waffle and sort things out and talk things through. That's my answer. What do you think?
Comprehensive answer. Yeah, I mean, ideally, I guess in a similar way that we do sometimes when we talk through game reviews, my gaming preferences are often quite different to yours. So when we play the same game, sometimes it's interesting to see whether we both had similar experiences or different ones. I mean, largely I'd say that we're usually semi-aligned on our thinking. I don't think we drift too far, either side of the line on it. But it is interesting to bring that together. And an example would be getting Biff in a room with someone else. Like, we often have a saying, it's like not a Biff film or not a Biff game. Like, it's got very specific requirements. And if you had someone like Biff reviewing a game, like, you'd absolutely want to know the Biff character before you took that as... Yeah. So it does have to be taken in consideration of that. I think what you said is the ideal way of doing it. I just don't think a lot of people or a lot of companies and reviewers do that.
Oh, no, they don't. It's not, because it's not realistic either. Like, I know full well that's not a realistic way to run a business. So it's like me saying, well, Game Pass should be 1p. I'd love it to be 1p, but it ain't realistic. So in absence of that, I think the context being provided is important. Yeah. And that's the way to do it. You know what happens? Some people, particularly with smaller outlets, maybe not IGN levels, but people do follow just individuals, like Skill Up and Mr. Matty Plays on YouTube. They do game reviews, and people just follow their opinion because they've over the years got to know what their preferences, their dislikes, their likes, what irks them, what doesn't, and they can say, oh, that's much like me. I tend to agree with your opinion, and they use that. So with IGN, obviously, it's kind of the score is given as this faceless kind of IGN score. But I do think people sometimes check who actually wrote it and think, oh, Travis wrote that. I remember him saying this, that, and that about another game, and I agreed with him. Or, oh, I don't know who that is. Maybe I should do some more reading on it. So
you do tend to just, even friends or whatever, like rely on people that you know have recommended good games or said something's crap in the past. Like, you think, I'll take that into consideration, like streamers, anyone can sort of have that influence when you do sort of align to people's opinions. Yeah. And then go, right, well, what's he saying? I think that is a good way of doing it, as you say, rather than taking some faceless, arbitrary score from somewhere. And also a good way of doing it is OpenCritic, because that is basically doing the same thing. It's aggregating scores and spitting everything out.
Absolutely, yeah. And I know people don't like Metacritic and OpenCritic or scores in general, but I do think they serve a good purpose or a function of just a barometer check. Just what's the range? And I always say you could add 5 points or take away 5 points from the median score that's given on those sites, and it's probably going to be around about right. Like, if something just fundamentally doesn't work or is technically broken, usually that will be reflected in the score. Some games get more punished than others, like we've spoken about Pokemon kind of getting away with it. But if you look at Pokemon's historical scores, that is in fact lower, Violet and Scarlet, than many of the others. So in the context of Pokemon games, you kind of think, oh, what's going on there? So I think they do serve a purpose. Just don't attach your... If you're looking forward to a game or you've played a game and love it and it only gets a 72 on OpenCritic, don't cry about it. Like, it doesn't matter. But it can be a useful just guide just to kind of pick out stuff that you might have missed. Having said that, Theatrhythm Final Bar Line cleans itself out of an 87 at the moment. Sure, that's now on the menu for you.
No. No.
No, not for me either. But actually, I need to ask Sam if he's going to play it or whether it's just a shrewd pick. Because he does play some... he plays stuff more outside the box than others, I would say.
Yeah, he does.
Due to his PC and Nintendo roots. But no, not for me either, but scored well nonetheless. And then the other side of the coin for Salmon, unfortunately, was Tales of Symphonia Remastered, 71. So we go from, as I put it in the group, glory to garbage almost. And I'm not saying the game's garbage. Again, this is in the context of a fantasy gaming league score. A 71 is not ideal. So that's unfortunate for him. It's also unfortunate because normally a remaster of something like that would do pretty well, but something clearly gone wrong. I'm guessing this won't be on the menu for you either. No, not me. It's not. It's simply not there.
They have to really, if it's not already on the sniffometer, then it has to really hit some high scores to get on there. Really, it's like 90s. Like,
yeah,
as we'll talk about, Hi-Fi Rush.
Wow.
It goes, oh, hang on a minute.
What's going
What's
on
that all
there?
about that's come from nowhere?
So here's another thing. We talked about math and maths earlier.
Yes.
Sniffometer or sniffometer?
It's a sniffometer to me. That's it. You don't say it's a thermometer, do you?
No.
You say it's a thermometer. So it's a sniffometer.
I haven't used that term for a while, actually. The menu's been introduced in the last month or so, putting stuff on the menu and then making sure your plate's clear, but that's fine. Horizon Call of the Mountain. This is an Adcock Grand Prix pick. I thought this was a banana skin being a VR game, and I feel like Adcock's kind of got away with this. Got an 82.
Yeah.
Like, he was sort of patting himself on the back in the group saying, oh, that pick was slagged off. And I was like, yeah, that's true. But that felt logically like that could end up being a sub 75 because it's a VR game for a start. But I think an 82, you'd be happy to get away with that unscathed.
I'm surprised anyone touches VR stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a real risk. And I mean, Half-Life Alyx did all right when that came out. But you really...
That's fucking Half-Life.
Yeah. And that's the trouble with it. It's kind of like, unless it's something like that, you're really playing with fire, in my view. But yeah, I think 82 it's an acceptable score. Like, you're always looking for above 80s. You'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it feels like more luck than... I mean, it's hard to say it's not judgment because he's put it in there for a reason.
Well, it's third pick. I mean, it's higher. But he got away. Like, I say he got away with it. I'm not willing to give him the benefit of the doubt after Alaskan Truck Simulator was subbed in last year.
That's what I said to him. I was like, you do stuff like that, and
you earn a reputation over the years.
Yeah,
it is really.
Don't play that. You put Alaskan Truck Simulator in, and it wasn't just that one though. They did about 3 subs last year, and they were all a bit.
Yeah.
What are you doing? It was almost. I said to you multiple times. It's like self-sabotage.
Yes.
And then chucks more in and then goes, look, I know what I'm doing. You go, well, do you, Tom?
Do you know what you're doing? Maybe he will. In fact, that actually gives him, let's just take a quick look at the scores on the doors. He has the best average now in the Grand Prix. He's got an 82 average after 2 games coming out. Hall's got an 81. Biff's got a 75. Paper's got an 80. Salmon's got a 79. So the average doesn't really matter. It's just a good way of tracking progress, really. And where that leaves the table... after this particular edition, Paper's still on top. He's got 3 games out, 239 points. Biff in second with 3 games out, 225 points. So he's trailing by 14. That's not an ideal start. Adcock with 2 games out, sort of the next rung down, 164 points. He's only 75 points behind Paper. That's what that articulates there, that Adcock could get a seemingly middling score and go top of the block. Salmon, 158 points. He's 81 points off the title. Hall with 1 game's he's 158 points off with 81 score. Adkins, not out of the blocks. Obviously, from your perspective, we know Parky's not out of the blocks either. He's got feet up this year. So what happens? These champions win it and they start putting feet up.
It's tricky, isn't it? It's what Gary Neville and Roy Keane always said. It's like, you can't, you celebrate for one night and then you focus on the next season.
Oh.
And that's how you become repetitive winners.
Exactly.
Feet up.
There's another, not a controversy, but there are ideas and conversations happening behind the scenes. In particular, because of a couple of shadow drops. We've had Hi-Fi Rush and Metroid Prime Remastered. I think Hi-Fi Rush now is at an 89 or a 90, and Metroid Prime 95.
That's mental.
A stunning. I mean, it's one of the all-time greats, so it's kind of no surprise. But after 43 reviews, it's sitting on a 95. Anyway, the point of this is that they are opportunities that no one in this FGL could have foreseen. You could have gambled on Metroid Prime Remaster because it had been rumoured, but it was shadow dropped outside of a transfer window, and so was Hi-Fi Rush, and therefore it didn't really give anyone a chance to take a gamble on these. And this is not I'm not asking you to make a new rule now, but it's more just for comment. Should the transfer window policy, which is, calendar months of March, June and September only, just be opened up like the old way of football? We got these transfer windows implemented all these years ago and people always moan about them. Now of the FGL, now of this, I wouldn't call it a trend, but shadow dropping is a thing in the industry, we know. Do we potentially look at speaking to the powers that be that run the stewardship of the rules and say, how about we look at opening up the transfer market and perhaps just closing it off for December only?
Yeah, so you're looking for board approval. We'll need to get a paper together, I think.
Wow.
I think...
Because you're one of the leading voices now, being in that championship game.
I think it's definitely a consideration. I mean, the big problem with the transfer windows, as always, is everyone's got time to consider it, and then there's this kind of glut of changes.
It's fucking annoying from my perspective.
And then
because at midnight I get people fucking staying up posting stuff, and I say don't post it till 9 a.m. because it ain't open, and they get pissy with me and say, "Oh, can you just accept it?" I'm like, "No." So if it's open all the time, it would just be as and when. Anyway, that's my selfish view on that part.
No, I mean I don't. If there wasn't a penalty, people could just be changing things around willy-nilly. But I think every time you do something, 5-point penalty, it's not going to necessarily increase the volume of transfers, but it would allow more. I think it would give advantage to people that are paying attention, because you can have feet up for ages and just go, well, I can't do anything anyway. Then all of a sudden, transfer windows roll round,
and then you get Adcock doing Alaskan truck sim because he's got nothing left.
Yeah, so I think it does give an advantage to people that are slightly more on the ball as to what's been delayed and what's not, and then taking action. But I think it's a valid thing to consider. I mean, I'm just trying to think if what would I do? Sort of. I mean, I guess at what point would we? So take a Hi-Fi Rush as an example. You watch the Expo or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
They go, right, that's live now.
Yeah,
that hasn't been reviewed yet.
No.
So I could then at that point go, well, it's available.
Yep.
But I don't know what the window would be. We just got to make sure that when people would do stuff like that, it is prior to obviously a score going up.
So all I'd do is at the time I'd get the request, I would go on OpenCritic, check the page, has the aggregated score come in? If it hasn't, they can have it. If it has, they can't have it. And there's been instances before where Paper, I think in particular, he put in Marvel's Avengers, and the first review had come in already on the page, and it was like 85. So he thought that was going to be a trend, and that was allowed because the aggregate score needs, I think, 4 or 5 solid reviews to go in. Anyway, ended up on like a 60-something, so it ended up being a disaster for him. But you could check the page for the early reviews that are going in and sort of take a gamble at that stage, because you don't know if the rest of them are going to give it 6 out of 10s.
You would allow it up to a certain number of reviews.
Well, up until the page gives you a score.
And I don't know if this would technically happen, but it's a tricky one, because say I put it in there at, I don't know, arbitrary time. Say the thing was in the evening because it's US. Say at 7 o'clock I went, oh, that Hi-Fi Rush looks like it could do well. 7:05, I go, boff, in there. You've got feet up, you're asleep, or you're having dinner, or I don't know. Then you don't get to it, you don't realise there's a notification. You get to it the next morning.
And then the score's there.
And then the score's there.
I'll say tough luck. It'd always be caveated with, I am not a fucking 24/7 service. If I don't get to it in time, that's part of the deal, unfortunately. I can't.
Yeah, that's fine. That's because then you'll get people going, but when I submitted it, there weren't any scores. I checked.
Yeah,
it's a screenshot.
Yeah, I know. Well, it doesn't mean nothing to me.
That's all I'm saying is we'd have to just make sure that...
This could all happen during a transfer window, though. This sort of controversy could happen if a shadow drop happened there. So it's not...
Yeah.
I think these are unlikely, but I don't know. It was just a thought exercise.
I think it's a realistic possibility. I think it rewards those that have got their finger on the pulse.
Yeah, I agree. Right, we're going to do quick Chrissy Dring European sales data. for the month of January. I've binned off the Power League because of the Power Rankings. It's just not worth it. And then we didn't get December's, if I remember correctly. I couldn't find it anywhere, so I don't know what Dream was playing at there. There was a thought in my head also, is that should we just narrow this down to the UK and really go full Brexit on it? But then I'm not convinced Dream always puts up UK only stuff. So again, it's just a case of it's better to have a wider net, I think, just to give a bit more clarity on what's going on. Yeah. So anyway, top 10 for digital and physical, keeping in mind that Nintendo don't provide digital numbers, and I am led to believe this is based on number of sales, not revenue. So it's not going to be tilted by more expensive games in comparison to an indie or smaller title. Anyway, FIFA 23 top, number 2 GTA 5, number 3 Red Dead Redemption 2, Number 4, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Number 5, God of War. Number 6, Dead Space. Number 7, Nintendo Switch Sports. Number 8, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. That's almost a heart now. Number 9, NBA 2K23. Number 10, Elden Ring Returns. So, managed to get itself back in.
Like, I just find it... it just... Grand Theft Auto...
I don't know what's going on there.
Red Dead Redemption.
10 years old this June, I think, GTA. It's either June or this summer sometime.
I just find it baffling.
170 million units have been shipped to that. I mean, it's absurd. I mean, I don't know how... That's not 170 million people, because I've bought it at least, I think, 3 times now, in theory. So there's people double and triple dipping, but still, absurd.
It's I mean, it is absurd. I mean, they must just be absolutely just laughing.
Yeah, well,
you must look at that and just go, I mean, to be fair to them, they continue to support it, which is great. And I think the fact that a game can be supported for so long, so successfully, is excellent. Because, quite frankly, if that was any other franchise, and I think the thing that annoys me, and I'm going off on a tangent,
the tangent merchant.
There's no reason why other games couldn't do that and support it in a similar way to GTA, but they just want to, like FIFA is a prime example. FIFA hasn't moved on that significantly.
No.
And they don't have to do it for 10 years, but they could update the squads, add in features, add in new game modes, and do things and support a game for longer.
Yeah.
But they just get locked in this. We've got to release a new one every year and just keep the cash rolling in.
Yep.
It's a frustration of mine.
Wow, that's what happens. Anyway, thought I'd just update that. There is some other interesting data, but not today, thank you. We're going to go now to some early, I guess, Hogwarts Legacy Impressions, because Logan took the plunge and joined Adkins in buying the game. Haven't got round to talking to Adkins about it, but when it's all wrapped up, we can do a more in-depth look at it. So this is very early impressions. And whilst we're here, I should note about just an FGL kind of scoring potential update, and something for people to consider. At the moment, Hogwarts is down to an 84, so it's lost 2 points since the last time we were here. Paper made a good point in that there's going to be a second wave of reviews potentially with the last gen versions, because it's not been released on PS4 or Xbox One yet. And then potentially a third wave with the Switch release coming after that. So there's potential for this to trip on technical banana skins and come down.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I must admit, from my first few hours, seeing it on less powerful consoles is a concern for me.
Yeah. It might struggle.
I think it will. I'll be interested to see what they do to make it playable. Yeah,
that Switch will have to be a cloud version. I mean, I've seen the game running in lots of gameplay, like you said, and it looks fucking amazing. How are they going to downgrade that to natively run on that Switch and that little cartridge?
I don't know. This is what I mean. Unless it's just a really scaled down, as we talked before about the limitations of that. It's struggling really on what I'd consider basics. Yeah, and to chuck something like this on it, which I don't know. I mean, I've got the most powerful, but I've got the Series X. I'm playing it on a balanced mode, and it still don't always seem 100% happy.
Oh,
So I worry for it a little bit.
yeah. I mean, they do have a history, Nintendo, of having third-party games on the Switch that are cloud-enabled. So you don't play it natively, you stream it. I think Hitman 3 is one of them. There's a couple of others that do it. Control might be another. But you can buy cloud versions of the game on there, and as long as you've got an internet connection, you can stream it, which comes with its own barrel of inconsistencies and input lag and all that sort of stuff comes with it. But yeah, I've seen some awful ports down to the Switch. Like Ark, I think, historically was one of the worst downgraded ports ever on the Switch. They've since rectified it and re-released it, but like it was almost like watching a PS1 game on it, like just one polygon, like blobs just roaring round. And
yeah.
This game looks good for a 2023 game. It looks like it could have been next gen only at some point, and the fact that the last gen and Switch versions are delayed or not coming out day and date suggests that it needs tinkering to get there, and whether they get there or not may be a concern.
Yeah, I think it's a completely valid point. A lot of it will hinge on, how they downgrade it, for want of a better term. I don't see any way of wording it other than that. Graphically or in terms of performance, locking the frame rate, whatever they need to do. But yeah, I mean, it does still frustrate me because I feel like that holds a game back. Whether it does or it doesn't, I don't know. But there's going to be such a huge audience that want to play this game over a period of time. I think that I can understand why they'd want to open it up to all these different consoles, which generally you'd expect younger generations, I guess, to have.
Get them a PS5 or an Xbox Series X and be done with it.
Yeah,
pay the money.
Unfortunately, a lot of the younger generation, I guess, aren't going to be as fortunate to have a monitor like I've got, or
no, it's true.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, so
it's plugged into the lounge telly, and whatever that is from 10 years ago is what it's going to be.
Yeah, it was the same when we were kids.
It's
kind of like not what you got, and you made the most of it. You weren't really as worried about the technical.
Didn't have much leverage, did you, to start demanding new technology for the main?
I mean, it's different for the kids these days, largely, I think, but they're still going to be hampered by what they've got.
Yeah.
And largely, they don't care as much about the technical aspects as we do.
No, not that. No, yeah, you're right. Anyway, Hogwarts Legacy, you took the plunge.
Yes.
Didn't take the plunge day and date, sort of after the reviews had come out that week. It was, a bit about 5 days after the release date, and reviews had already been in for over a week at that point. So I guess my first question is, why at that point did you decide that the time was right?
Steve. I had to get Hi-Fi Rush done. So I'm operating this.
Didn't want his plate full.
Yeah, so I'm doing this one game. I say one game at a time. Like, in terms of multiplayer, I'll just have whatever's going. But in terms of like a single player experience, I used to get snarled up with having multiple ones on the go, and it just got messy. And I ended up not completing some, and you then get snarled up.
God of War took about 8 months for you, both of them.
So I'm basically trying to not get snarled up in that. So I finished God of War, and I was like, I think that pretty much coincided with the drop of Hi-Fi Rush.
Yeah.
I was like, right, well, I'll play that. And then Hi-Fi Rush was taking a bit longer because of the wrist and various other things, as we've talked about. So I then finished Hi-Fi Rush the other day and was like, right, now the plate's clear.
Yeah.
Let's get Hogwarts on the go. So that it was always potential for day one, a day one drop. I was always going to get it. I didn't see the reviews particularly affecting that decision too much, unless they absolutely. But the reviews are just we're expecting the reviews to be lower than they were.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
yeah.
So,
it was
and I was still going to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was always on the menu. It's just purely to clear the plate first.
Is there a time period that may have passed? So say Hi-Fi Rush took another 3 weeks. It's a longer game. Say it's a different game, even if that's easier to put yourself in this scenario. Is there a time period where you'd have been like, I'll wait for that to go on sale, or now I've missed the initial kind of hype cycle or zeitgeist or whatever people want to call it, maybe I'll look at something else that's newer coming down the pipe? Or would it just be the timing's right for me right now. I'm going to buy it at whatever price it is. Because I get snarled up and think, well, if I haven't played it in the first month, I'll wait for it to go on sale, and then you could be waiting 9 months, and then it goes on sale the day Starfield drops. I'm like, well, now that can't be played, and Ronnie gets himself in a right old state missing things. So, is there a time period that would have lapsed, say 4 weeks away, that you was playing another game that didn't finish, and would you still have gone in and just bought it unreserved, or would you have been looking around at what's occurring new at that point?
This was always on the sniffometer quite high up. We've talked before about my love for, and I'll get into it more, I guess, as we think about the first impressions. But this was always there. Like, I wasn't prepared, I guess, to wait. I wanted to play this. Like,
Hi-Fi Rush got in the way, inadvertently.
It did, yeah. Hi-Fi Rush got in the way. I thought that was going to be, and it was really in palette cleanser territory. But it took a little bit longer, maybe sort of like 5-6 hours longer than I thought it was going to, and that because of the delay with the wrist, sort of took 5 or 6 days. So I wasn't ever really going to be on the doors like of Asda waiting to get this in physical, but it was definitely within the first.
They still do that.
I don't know. No, probably not for this game, but it's arbitrary now anyway.
Yeah,
it's 24 hours, isn't it?
True.
It's like turn up when you like. But
I
it was always.
I remember queuing up for FIFA at least 1 year with. I think Adkins might have been with me.
I was there for Call of Duty 1 year. It might have been the original Modern Warfare 2. I think I was there. It was one of the games I was definitely waiting at Asda for.
I've done FIFA. I've done a midnight for. This is about 15 years ago now. I've done when I got my Switch. I went and got that at midnight with Zelda.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
And Red Dead Redemption 2. I think I went and did it for.
Yeah.
I think that's it. But
I'd be tempted to go and do it just to experience it again.
Yeah.
But
it's only relevant if you want the physical version, because you can pre-download it and it'll unlock at midnight and you can be playing it before you've even left the house. So
yeah, it kind of does take that away a little bit. But some games like that I do actually weirdly want in
physical form.
In physical. I didn't go for Red Dead 2. I did that as a pre-download. But GTA, when that drops, I'd be up for going down there and then realise how old I am when there's all the kids down there and I'm there.
Well, they should all be at least 18 because
Well, they're not though. This is what annoys me. But yeah, back to the point at hand. Yeah, I mean, it was always going to get played, and generally speaking, and it is different for me because I don't buy as many games as you do. Like
I don't buy that many now.
Yeah, but in the grand scheme of things, your palette of games that you want to play is much bigger than mine. And I will pick up, like, even Hi-Fi Rush, as an example, I only picked up because it was on Game Pass. So Game Pass for me is the thing that opens up some different games that are probably not usually within my usual forte that I think, oh, I'll give that a go. But generally, there are a lot of games I'm just like, I want to play it, so I'll pay what they're charging me when I want to play it.
Yeah.
I'm not that fussed. Some games, like Division 2, like there's some games we'll just go, we'll get to that when it's an acceptable price. Like, we do that, but for something like this, a first-party single-player game, like if the runway's clear, I'll just pay whatever I need to get it within a price range. Because I think I messaged you, didn't I? And I was like, look,
where the deals?
It was like 70 quid or something, or 65 quid on the store.
Yeah.
I was like, what you seen? And then I always forget about CD keys and managed to get it for 52, which is fine. I'll pay it.
Yeah, that's a good price. It's on Xbox Series X. You said, how many hours do you think you've played thus far of it?
Of actual gameplay, I reckon about 3, maybe. So really 2 or 3. I mean, I was trying to sort of play it in amongst doing some other things the other day, and it was on, but I wasn't actually solidly playing it. But I reckon I got 2 to 3 hours in there and got a pretty good flavour for what it's at least initial phase is what it's about.
Yeah. So as a Potter fan, what are the early impressions then of this? Is there any? How have they done, I guess, on the source material side of things? This is set, as I understand, well before the actual Potter films and the books. And I don't know about when Fantastic Beasts is, whether it's before that as well, around the same time. But how are they doing? Does it feel like a Harry Potter, proper type, or is it Wizarding World? I don't know what you call this franchise anymore.
It definitely feels like that sort of. It feels like that world. 100%. I mean, you start it off, and I won't give loads of spoilers away of the story, but the way that I don't know. In some ways, it kind of feels like Harry Potter, but the characters are just different. So
Yeah.
and there's some little nice nods back to existing names and things and Wizarding World names that you'll recognise, and they link it back quite well without including specific characters from the worlds that we know and the books and everything and the films that you've seen. But yeah, I think they do that well, and there's all I think sometimes in these games you're waiting for all these references to like Diagon Alley and going to the bank and and all this thing, and they do all that quite early on. Like
Right.
you're not waiting ages to get involved with all that stuff and use your wand, and it chucks you into that pretty early on in the game, which I think is good, because sometimes you think, oh, the worst thing is if you're a young kid. And one of the things, by the way, that it does do nicely is it doesn't chuck you in as a first year student. Like it chucks you in as a fifth year student, a latecomer, basically.
So you're not. So it's not like you've been there for a number of years and you're new, but you're going in because you're an older, I guess, student. You're going in sort of. I don't know how all the years work. But I guess that's later on. That's like the final year.
Yeah. So you're. I think you're pretty much coming to the end. Like the fifth year is when you do your hours.
Right.
So you're essentially like doing your G. So it's like joining school in year 11, basically.
Yeah, which would have been easier for everyone, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, so it's quite nice. So it chucks you in things where it's like you're a bit more. You're not running around as a kid. You're like a teenager.
Yeah.
Everything's got a bit more maturity about it, the way that you interact and stuff. So instantly, it's engaging, I think, is the point. The first thing you notice is it does look great. Like the game itself is beautiful. The environments are really nice. Like there's a lot of attention to detail, and I think when we discussed this before, it needs that because people are so invested in this story, the franchise itself. You want people to just be like wowed by the environments and everything, and it does that brilliantly. Hogwarts looks fantastic, and everything's you can engage with a lot of things. You can talk to everyone. It's the first few hours is really just chuck you in there and sort of gets you going.
Yeah,
and I really liked that about the game. It's sort of like 3 hours in, and I've seen various different things. You get the freedom to explore pretty much all of Hogwarts, and like it's been a really good start to the game, which I didn't expect. Sometimes I was expecting it to be a slow burn in getting you involved.
Pentiment-like.
Well, yeah, I mean, I liken, if you look at Pentiment to this, and I think what I've done in the first 3 hours in this versus the first 3 hours in Pentiment, it's just like completely different. But it's I'm glad that they've done that. They basically just chuck you in at the deep end. You get to learn some spells really quickly, and start doing RPG elements of a game. Solving puzzles, doing quests. Like really does just chuck you in there early on. So yeah, it's a really good experience so far, and yeah, the game looks great.
You said that it looks so good, and one of the concerns with lesser powered machines was that it might struggle, because you said it's not. It feels like it's struggling a little. Well, I'm misinterpreting what you said, but you had raised concerns that it's not completely perfect from perhaps the technical perspective. What have you noticed in these early hours that are raising a little bit of eyebrows, and you think, what are they playing?
I need to have a play around with this, but I think you get 5 settings of how you want
Jesus
versus performance, and it's basically through to like all like 4K glory down to like focus on predominantly frame rate, which I don't quite like. I'd prefer it if they went, do you want that frame rate or do you want those graphics? And
right.
then you can change the two. But essentially I thought I'll chuck it in the middle, a balanced performance. And the game looks great, but when you just doesn't, especially by today's standards, it doesn't feel like buttery, smooth, constant 60 at that point. And I don't know whether I need to validate this and have a play around with it, but it just feels a little bit I don't know, it doesn't feel like glorious buttery smooth. Yeah, I don't know. I need to validate this, and it might be either my eyes or I don't know. I don't know, but it just you just think I wish it was just a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not janky.
No.
It's not inconsistent, but I don't know. I was just for some reason expecting this like glorious buttery smoothness.
He's not had it.
And I don't. And it's not. It is smooth, and I don't really know how to explain it at the moment. I need to play a little bit more of it, but it doesn't feel like. I don't know. Maybe it's because I've been playing like Call of Duty on 120 frames or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. It could be that even that you're noticing something that's less than 100 over.
This problem,
yeah.
And this is what I said to you when you've got games that support on a monitor that supports like 144 frames, and then you go and play something that might be locked at 60,
It's half.
which is half. Like,
less noticeable than 30 to 60, but you'll still feel it if you're playing a lot.
You'll still feel it. So this is what I'm wondering. It's like whether I've been playing stuff that, and to be fair, something like Hi-Fi Rush is actually buttery smooth.
Yeah.
And I've gone from basically playing that to this, which is obviously a completely different experience. But I don't know whether I'm just sort of adjusting to that experience.
Could it be that it's just that something like Hi-Fi Rush is more action focused and therefore it shows off more of the silkiness because you're darting around, parrying and dodging and blowing people away in the early going. I mean, you've done a bit of combat, but you may not have been exposed to flying around on the broom or doing stuff. So
I've done a bit of dueling, which is it's smooth. It's not smooth, but for some reason it just feels. I think it might even just be from like playing Hi-Fi Rush and how quick and like that game is. Then adjusting to this, it makes it feel a little bit like less smooth. I don't know. I'll have to report back on that, but it doesn't. It's just something there that I just need, and I'll have to have a play around with some of the graphical and frame rate settings to see what's what on it. But that's just an observation I feel like I need to make, but it might just be based in nonsense at the moment, based on other games I've been playing.
That's fair enough.
But the simple fact is, it looks great. The attention to detail is great. One thing I have noticed is the voice like sync and the mouth is a little bit. I don't know. It is a little bit poor.
Ain't up to Ragnarok levels.
This is the problem when you're playing something like I've played a God of War, and then you go and see like mouth movement, which not beautifully synced up, and like with all these different like, it looks like someone's talking, whereas on this it feels like just the mouth's just doing that.
Yeah.
In time with what I'm saying, like it feels a little bit like that. But you can get past it. It's not like fundamental, but it's just something I've noticed. It's kind of like the lip movement isn't as good as you've perhaps come to expect from some games these days. But it's minor stuff.
Interesting. So much of a surface scratcher at the moment. Any other poignant things you've noticed, either positive or negative, or just wanted to call out about these early impressions?
I think, I've been super critical on a few elements there around the performance and some of the lip sync, but they're just a few little frustrations that I've noticed at the minute. But the general gameplay, the availability of the quests early on, it really does chuck you into a lot of interesting stuff, and you get to learn about the characters quite quickly and get involved in stuff. Like it feels like the game. Do you remember that original Harry Potter game that come out where you were Harry Potter and you're roaring around? Like it feels like the game that I've been waiting for probably that game might have come out in like 2002 or something.
It would have been early. It would have been Philosopher's Stone probably. So when did that come out? 2001. So it would have been within a couple of years of that.
I think it was about 20 years ago. Yeah. Like it feels like the real game that everyone that played that game wants. Like it really does feel like that, and I'm excited to get into more of the dueling and some of get on with some.
Get on that fucking broom and get out there and see what's occurring in these woods.
Well, basically just you get a question early on. It's like, are you more interested in exploring or more interested in being academic? I don't necessarily think these have got any real impact, but I want to explore. It's like that. I absolutely want to get out there and see what this game's got to offer. But yeah, I mean, so far, if you're a Harry Potter fan, or arguably, don't even have to be a huge Harry Potter fan, it looks like it's got potential of a really good game.
I've heard impressions of people that don't really care for it, but think this is still just a great game in its own right. So
I think that would be my gut feel, is that
caught people off guard.
As an RPG, it's going to be engaging and fun in its own right. And even if you're not hugely steeped in Potter lore, I think the environment and everything will still be, brilliant for someone to play through.
Last question.
Yes.
The big question that everyone will be asking and will slaughter me if I don't ask. Which ass did you choose? Is it House? What they called houses?
Yeah.
Got that right. I've watched all the films, by the way. That's the only thing I've done with it. So I've watched them all, and the Fantastic Beasts. So I know from that lens only, but I know the books. People say, "Oh, you're missing out on the backstory of Dumbledore and his uncle."
It's always going to be Gryffindor. It's all for me. It's never even.
Is that Harry's one?
Yeah.
And that's where those two twins are. I hate those twins in the films. The Weasley twins.
The Weasley twins.
Fucking can't stand those cunts.
Do you know they're not really ginger either?
Really?
Yeah.
It wasn't because they were ginger. Don't get me wrong. I'm not anti-ginger. But
well, that's what I
get accused of that though if you say it. So you're right to clarify it. But I just found those pair of cocks.
I think they're
irritating.
They're meant to be slightly. But yeah, I don't like Slytherin because I don't like the connotations with it. So that's automatically ruled out. And I always feel like Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff are much.
Hufflepuff's an awful name, so let's get that out of the way. Ravenclaw, though, is like the best name of the lot. If I was going to do it blind, that's what I would do. But you know what I would do?
I was hoping. The reason why is because I like it when the Sorting Hat goes, Gryffindor.
Oh, right.
Like, that's the only, and he didn't really do it. So I was like, well,
blown it.
But apparently Ravenclaw's meant to. I think each one gives you some sort of buff.
Oh, right, that's interesting. So there is
like a different
starting perk or
apparently
something.
I think it's like Ravenclaw's meant to be the best, but I was like, well, I'm always going to have Gryffindor.
I would, if going in blind, I'll choose Ravenclaw or maybe Slytherin, but I think I'm more likely to do some sort of online, or which house do you belong to?
Yeah,
and then answer it. They do it. Okay.
So up front, they go, "What are you like?" They ask you some questions.
Okay.
Like, are you loyal, or are you adventurous, or are you this, that, or the other? And on that,
they'll
so I think
suggest a house for
Ravenclaw to me, and then it gives you the option if you want, because as per the books, you can choose if you want to. So it does let you choose. And I went, nah, Gryffindor.
I'd have to accept whatever it shows for me, I think.
Yeah, I knew you would. Yeah, but it does give you that. So it's not. It's just like one question. I think.
Yeah.
It gives you, like, I
think there's an online integration somewhere. There's a website. I'm sure someone posted it and somewhere I saw. I'll try and well, it's no use for you now. You started, but I'll investigate all that as and when. If I get to it, which I plan to at some point. Well, there we go. That's Hogwarts Legacy. Some early impressions there, and many of you are playing it already. The sales figures seem to be supporting that. So, lots of people diving in on Hogwarts Legacy. Lots of people enjoying it. Let's get into some full-blown reporting back and chat on Hi-Fi Rush. To close out this edition of Idle Game Chat. Usually we have a transition, but given the timely nature of this game and also the fact that Logan's sitting here right now, it all lines up perfectly for us just to go straight into it. So if you missed that little music intermission, you're not going to get it this time. I could do it manually. There you go. Hi-Fi Rush, Logan. So Game Pass Shadow Drop.
Yeah.
Scoring very well with the critics, come out of nowhere. I'll say up front that this is an action game, first of all.
Yeah.
Through and through. Has like RPG elements like most games do. You can choose to upgrade certain skills and, not craft your character because you are set, character based, but you can choose which skills you focus on throughout the game, whether it's health or attack and all these different things. So it has those elements to it, but it's primarily an action game, and its twist on this is that it's beat based.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is there's a constant beat throughout the game going roughly at that speed. I mean, it ain't far off what that is, and everything in the game is kind kind of funneled through that beat. If you press the attack button outside of that beat, you won't hit the opponent until the beat lands. So there'll be a slight delay and animation towards that. The animations in the cutscenes are all tied to the beat. Like the characters move in kind of in line with that. So it's all, that's the kind of unique part of it. Now I must say, I'm not really good at these action games at the best of times. You know, just a straight up action game. I can get through them, but I always feel like I'm just getting through them. I never really feel like I'm in control of what I'm doing, which is absurd because they're one of the most in-depth, mechanically robust games you can play, or action games. You can really do some cool stuff in there if you know what you're doing. But I very, very, very rarely have I got to a stage where I feel like I'm in a flow with these games. So I wanted to put that on the table first because I think that's important to clarify. As there are a lot of people that would be far more experienced. Someone like Adkins would probably eat this game up because he likes those games and he's good at them. Are you more on my side of things, somewhere in the middle, or are you a pro like Adkins when it comes to these action-based melee games?
I ain't a pro. No, I'd say if I was aligning myself to one or the other, it'd be more alongside what you were saying.
Two blowers, basically, is what we're saying here.
Basically, I usually excel in the early stages, but as things get a bit more complex,
they start to ramp things up, didn't they?
Yeah, as they ramp it up, I go, I'm out my depth a little bit here. What am I doing? Normally, I'm like, give me a gun, I'll shoot it. But if we're starting to get in real mechanical games where you have to do things,
combos and
combos, I sort of start
parrying.
Dodgy. Yeah, I'm like, it gets a bit too much for this old brain. So I have to find something that allows me to get through it, like style or a way of doing it where I don't have to like deal with that stuff as much. I think is a way to put it.
Yeah. What I also want to state at the start of this is there was a lot of excitement about this game, just simply the fact that one, it was an Xbox game, which we were starved of most of last year, so that helps.
Unbelievable things. Yeah.
Unbelievable. We got a game from them, and then two, it was shadow dropped and available on Game Pass within a few hours of their developer direct they put out many weeks ago. And I think there was a huge amount of excitement and buzz just for that. Yeah. And I don't think that's relevant to the conversation we're about to have, and I'm not going to at all reference it other than just mention at the start. I feel like that is definitely seeped into some people's excitement for the game. I don't know if that's seeped into their opinions of it, but even reading some reviews, they spend a good paragraph mentioning about how great it was and what a great time it was for that. And it's like, okay, I guess that's kind of relevant to how the game got delivered to you, but the actual product in front of us is separate from that. And I wanted to see if you were on the same page of that because, it was exciting, but it wasn't. No, I'm not going to. It wasn't that exciting. It wasn't like Christmas when you were a kid and you couldn't sleep because you're excited for Father Christmas to come in that chimney and not break his neck, hopefully. Nick those cookies and milk. Never left it out for him, actually.
Poor bastard.
Well.
I think from my perspective, it was, I just was fortunate that I had a space, I guess. I'd literally just finished God of War. I was about to finish it.
Yeah.
Wish dropped, and I was like, well, all right, that's reviewing surprisingly well. That come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I've got a bit of space and runway before Hogwarts Legacy. Seems like it could be within palette cleanser territory or not far off it. Let's have a look at it. And I thought, at least I'll give it a go and see if it grabs me. And if I'm not fussed by it, as we know, I can quite quickly drop it. But I had to look at what it was all about, and I was like, it looks intriguing, so I thought I'll give it a go. But I don't think the hype necessarily is relevant in my view of the game.
No, I mean, it shouldn't be either in anyone's opinion of it. Like, if that's bleeding into it, then we've got a bit of a problem. So parking all that noise aside, because it was very noisy and exciting, and people with stars in their eyes going, I can't believe it. The game itself, Hi-Fi Rush, we mentioned, is a beat-based sort of combat game. We're both rookies, poor, sloppy, old, not well versed at these types of games. So keep that in mind as we go through it. All accurate. What would be, I think, at this stage, a good idea to do, which I try and do, but I often forget because it's easy to forget, is to head over to the store page and just see what Tango Gameworks and Phil were cooking together for us, and understand if you were just coming into this and you didn't, wasn't there for the big hype moment when it shadow dropped. You come and read this on the store and think, what do I play next? Here's what we've got, some select parts of it. Feel the beat as a wannabe rock star Che. Is it Che or Chai?
Chai.
Chai and his ragtag team of allies rebel against what the fuck? Feel the beat as a wannabe rock star Chai and his ragtag team of allies rebel against an evil robotics enhancement mega corporation with raucous rhythm-based combat. From Tango Gameworks, the studios that brought you The Evil Within, Ghostwire Tokyo, no, really, comes Hi-Fi Rush, an all-new action game where the characters, world, and the combat stylishly sync to the music. They've written that so annoyingly, I'm not going to go any further, but that's the basic kind of fundamentals of it. I'll do one bit. Labelled defective after a shady corporate experiment mistakenly fused a music player to his heart, Chai must now fight for his freedom in a slick animated world where everything, platforming, puzzles, enemy attacks, and even colourful gags and banter are synced to the beat. So that's circling back to what I mentioned earlier about it being all synced to the beat. That's actually a good point. The art style on this is, look, it ain't AAA levels of realism, but I will say it's fucking gorgeous to look at sometimes. It really does get that animated / anime style and brings it to life on an interactive video game. And the cutscenes they're actually the weakest part because they're out of engine, you can tell. There's a slight disconnect between the cutscenes and the in-engine stuff, so there's a little bit of a disconnect there. But generally, when you're running around this world, it's colourful, it's vibrant, it's popping off. Like it really is. It really is good from that perspective. I thought anyway.
Yeah, like performance and the way that it looks. It's like, as I've said before, like it's super slick. Like it looks great. Everything's a really nice colour. I like the art style as well. It kind of took me by surprise at how well it played within that art. Like it's so slick and everything's so nice and colourful and everything bopping around and everything. I was like, I enjoyed the environment a lot. Like I think the environment is probably one of the best things about it. It's intriguing. Everything is interesting, I think, is a way to put it.
Yeah, it's what they were aiming for. They delivered and landed easily. Like this was, they're clearly going for a unique. Well, it is a unique style in video games, but a style based around animated anime or other TV shows or films based around that, and they absolutely nailed it. I guess the other thing outside of that kind of adds to the atmosphere and the theme is the soundtrack. Now, I recognise the names of some of these tracks, some of these bands or artists, like 9 Inch Nails, I think is one of them or whatnot, and they have some, I guess, like stuff they've made in house as well, which aids streamers so they don't get, or content creators so they don't get tinged by a copyright strike. You can turn all the licensed tracks off and just have the original soundtrack that was created for it, but I left it on because why not? Any bangers that you picked out from this this plethora of artists and music?
By the Cold Stairs. I like the Cold Stairs, they're good. See, that was one that I pulled out. But I thought the soundtrack generally throughout the game, I liked the fact that you're in a different stage, there's a different soundtrack.
Yeah.
Albeit, I think some of the beats are slightly faster than the others. I don't think it's like a consistent, I can't think what you call it now. On a metronome where it's like ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
I think some of them are a little bit quicker and some of them are a little bit slower. But I liked that element because I think if that was the same throughout, it'd get a bit like, same song here. This is annoying me.
Yeah. And it's good they kind of tie some of the movement or some of the interactions back into said music. And even there's some really cool boss battles that have multiple phases that have, are linked into different parts of the soundtrack, and they come together nicely in those moments. I think when it's at its best are those moments, but they felt like they were front loaded, and then at some point I was like, I've not really seen much of this anymore, and it's not as interesting. So I don't know if it just wore off over time, but
it didn't wear off. The battles become different.
Well, let's talk about the combat then.
Yeah.
Everything in time of a beat. Enemy attacks, they say, you can easily block or parry. 'Cause you learn those. You can either block or dodge and parry them.
Yeah.
Because it's always in line with the beat. But as I mentioned, the beat's very quick. So you could get hit 6 times in a second almost, the way that fucking triggers off. So it's of no use to take that tutorial advice it gives you and try and implement it, because you're better off watching them and seeing when the fucking trigger comes and then doing what you need to do, because trying to time everything to the beat didn't work for me. Combat wise, I said I never felt like in this game, this is no exception to the other action games I've played. Maybe I got 1 S tier score. So the game scores every encounter you have throughout every level. I was getting A's and B's mostly. Yeah. I got 1 S tier throughout the whole entire thing, because my beat time was just, it was always like 40%. I was never really quite getting on top of it. And I don't know, everyone's... it felt fine, but I never really felt like this was some sort of exceptional combat system. Like, yes, it's stylish, and I guess to someone watching, you might think, "Cool, that looks fucking incredible." But when you boil it down, you're hitting X and hitting Y, you're dodging with B, or parrying with B or whatever, and dodging with A, and it's like, yes, you've got combos that you can deal damage with and do extra damage with, but A, I didn't need to. I played on normal and was able just to smash my way through. And B, it just very few times did it click with me, and I got in that flow status maybe 3 times throughout the 10 or so hours that I spent in it. How was your experience? Because it felt okay to me, but I wasn't completely blown away and like, oh, this is a new way to be doing this. At the end of the day, to me, it felt like any other action game towards the back end, which is fine, but wasn't the kind of runaway, unique, innovative combat that I was kind of expecting it to blossom into. And that may well just be down to me never clicking with me, but I think people need to understand that if you're coming from a perspective that me and Logan are, you may be in the same boat.
Yeah, so it took me a while I understood the basics where I was like, right, okay. The difficulty I found was like switching up the timings between the X and the Y attack.
Yeah.
And in the end, I just pretty much stopped using the Y attack.
It's heavy attack, isn't it? So X is your quick attack and Y is your heavy attack.
But the Y you only do every other beat, or on the off beat or something, and it was just like, yeah, I just struggled to time them together, like in a way that become intuitive. I found myself having to think, right, how do I put this together so that it works in the beat?
It never felt natural to me.
No,
I was shoehorning this in, and then it weren't paying off because I was getting it wrong.
And it's fine at the beginning because you go, right, okay, I've only got 3 enemies, 3 elements to deal with. I can actually think about it. But as it chucks more shit at you, you don't. If it doesn't become intuitive, you can't do it. And I think, you referenced at the beginning, as you go through, you sort of get credits and things that you can buy upgrades for. And essentially the upgrades are different combos in an attacking sense. And I found myself just buying some that are just like, mash this button or hold this button sort of thing and let it go. It's because I was like, if I have to remember X, Y, offbeat, Y, like I was just like, I'm just not in the heat of the moment. I'm just going to be mashing, so it's a waste of time. So I basically engineered my character just by health because I was like, I need that.
That's what I did.
You get a special, which is one that heals you, and I had that. So I was like, we'll just go for this, mash the X button on the beat.
We'll tank up and just deal with it.
Tank up and deal with it. Because, you've got melee characters and you've got some that are shooting you with a laser. And as much as you try and go for the ones with the laser...
It only hit you on the beat, time it.
It doesn't teach you parry until about 4 hours into the pissing game. You can't even use it. So you're just having to kind of dodge stuff early on. But yeah, I quickly identified, I think, that I was not going to be doing this combo between X and Y and remembering that. So I built my character and playstyle to accommodate for that.
Just keep it as simple as possible.
I liked the beat, and I liked playing. I was fine hitting X on the beat. Like I mastered that, and that was intuitive. Like fine with that, like no problem. But as soon as you expect me to then also start, as we'll get into, calling other characters in and worrying about shields, and like it chucks more things at you to remember and to do. It then just becomes a lot, I think, to also remember specific combos, and that's how I found it anyway.
Yeah. One thing that didn't help, and I don't know if I would want more of this, to be honest, having finished the game, which may be crucified for saying this, but the pace between battles is incredibly slow. Like, you would do an encounter, it would take a minute and a half. And then it felt like you were sometimes... And the levels are linear. There are little cubby holes you can go off to get extra bits or hidden items or, extra parts that if you get 3 types of a health, item, it will then boost your health as a permanent upgrade. So there are little cubby holes to go off to, but it's a linear game. You go from A to B to the end of the level, and throughout that you have a number of combat encounters. And even I just felt like I was going multiple minutes with no combat encounters at all. And what frustrated me was that there needs a sprint button when you're outside of combat, because the sort of pace that you're jogging at, again, because it's tied to this fucking beat, his animation, they're trying to be clever. Talk about developers being up their own arse. Everything has to match this beat. So his whole animation stride and speed is matching that. It just felt really slow and cumbersome. And because the platform in itself I didn't feel it was great at all. I think absolutely the weakest point. Like jumping, you would jump up and then you would very quickly fall down. It felt like a fucking heavy car that was just being dropped. So the platforming side of things I didn't find engaging. And then just getting from A to B, if you had to run, you could only jog. Yes, you could dash. You could dash 3 times in a row if you hit the beat right. But just give me a sprint button. I can just steam down this hallway and get to where I need to go. And in my mind, what I started to notice was that by the time I got to the next combat encounter, I was cold. Whatever flow state I'd got into previously had gone. And I almost needed more consistent combat encounters throughout the level to keep me sharp. But because I had these big bogged down...
Nothing or everything.
Yeah.
Like you never sort of got 1 or 2 enemies here and there.
Just to warm up.
Right. Or to go, right, let me just practice, try and sort of nail this combo. So it's
got its own practice area for you to do that, Logan. Come on.
Yeah, but I ain't wasting my time in that. I want like some sort of enemies throughout. Like, even if it's just 2 guards for me to deal with here and there. But because it's doing this grading aspect.
Yes.
You're kind of in that zone or not.
Yeah.
And I didn't mind the downtime necessarily, but I did find myself just in the end, I'd just go bump, 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 bump on that dash. And I'm just dashing everywhere because I'm like, this is it just becomes irritating that you're just slugging around. And I found the platforming irritating. The amount of times I tried to like double jump, and you can only dash once in the air.
Oh,
and also
mate.
Sometimes I'd like do a jump, a dash, a double jump, and then sometimes magnetize on using LB, and it just wouldn't let me do the attachment. So why can't I dash, jump, and magnet? There's a few things around the traversal that were not very good, I found, or that I didn't particularly enjoy, or weren't that strong. But I definitely found myself, because there's a period of time in between battles that you get cold again. You're sort of like, right, okay, well now I've got to like go through all this button mashing, and then it's like button mashing done, right, okay, and then just run and button mashing, and then it's all or nothing. And I found that difficult to. Most games ramp it up like gradually throughout a game, but this was just constantly like all or nothing throughout.
No, it was just an irritant having so much downtime between encounters. Why there was no fodder just in between those that you could just kill and, like you said, just play around with, even just because you're a weak enemy that you can just mess around with a combo. But I think it's a symptom of everything's got to be graded, so it has to be this. We can't grade you on 2 enemies because it's too short. People are like, that's not an encounter. So it's kind of a symptom of this structure where they wanted everything to be graded, and every battle therefore had to be of substance. But you would go.
I don't know why they need that arcadey grading system. It didn't. Every time I was like, why how
It's
does
insulting, isn't it, when you get a fucking C for it? You think, wow.
Well, I've been shot 400 times. I missed me parries because I've got
Yeah.
a split second to get it right. Ain't good enough.
Yeah, it's a bit of a strange one in that sense. Other things that annoyed me, it's getting crapped on a little bit here, so I'm conscious of that, but I don't know how games haven't solved this. It's so common that this is not a unique thing to Hi-Fi Rush, but I really wanted to call this out. When you're walking through the world, doing these long, bloody platforming bits, often you've got someone chatting in your ear because there's a team of people, as we mentioned in the store page, a ragtag group of allies that kind of join you along in the journey. There's someone always waffling in your ear about what's going on or telling you about the zone you're in, etc. And if you go at a normal pace forwards, you inevitably cut off that conversation. It will trigger the next set of voice lines, or it will drop you into an encounter. So I had to stand there still whilst they were talking, because several times in the early goings it cut things off. Why hasn't this been sussed out consistently in video games? I'll tell you one of the best implementations of it goes back to God of War 2018. When you're in that boat roaring round, I used to sit there and think, I've got to listen to this fucking... I'm right at the shore, I've got to listen to Mimir fucking waffling. Then one time I was like... I think I accidentally got out and it stopped him. And I was like, oh, for fuck's sake, now I'm not going to hear that story. Anyway, 2 hours later, I got back in the boat and then Mimir went, oh, where was our brother? Ah, yes. And I was like, oh, no, this is catering for... Probably a Ronnie-ism, this is. That doesn't want to miss dialogue that's in there. And... someone must playtest this game and say, if I go from A to B, I'm not rushing through the game. I'm going in the cubby holes. I'm looking for like little secrets and whatnot. I'm not just mainlining it, and yet still I'm consistently having dialogue cut off. Why ain't that being addressed?
Yeah, I knew as soon as you said that you were going to hark back to God of War, because that is one of the best games I've seen. And sometimes for me, I think, oh, for fuck's sake, Mimir, will you give it a rest? Like, I just want some peace and quiet in this, and you keep trying to resume a story.
Yeah.
But it's a perfect execution of trying to give backstory, but not making you feel like it's not impeding your progress in the game. It's just like when you've got time to listen, it'll tell you what they've got to say, and that is probably the best execution of it that I've seen.
Yeah.
And they do that again in the second game in Ragnarok. It is brilliant. But it is annoying. I mean, for me, I was like, I don't really care too much. It doesn't bother me that much if I lose it in a game like Hi-Fi Rush. But I know you've got Ronnie sitting there wanting all that rich lore, and it's getting cut off. I know it's a problem for him.
It is an irritant.
I agree. I don't know why it doesn't finish one before it lets you start another. It's bizarre.
Yeah, it happens in a lot of games, though. To be fair, but I will. If I continue to see it, I'll continue to call it out. Speaking of the actual story and the narrative, the tone of this game, some people just find it highly irritating because they'll think they're coming across as being serious. At no point did I think they were trying to portray this as a serious story at all. It knows it's being ridiculous. It knows it's being cringeworthy, and it kind of fits this wacky, crazy, colourful world that they've created. So I was actually fine with all the nonsense that Chai has to say. Is it Chi or Chai? I can't remember what we decided. Chai. What Chai had to say, and the responses, and he's a goofball. And I was like, I can see this annoying people, but personally, because to me it came across as, we know this is nonsense, but this is the atmosphere of the game, and it stuck to it. I was like, okay, I can accept this. If we use God of War as the example. If this was popping up in God of War, some of the lines, you'd be like, what is going on here tonally? But I do think that from that perspective, it harkens back to the style and the look of it. Everything felt like it existed in this world and was obviously not real, but was consistent throughout. And that's the characters, the way that the story goes ahead. It's got a comedic slant throughout, during the game, in the cutscenes with the character interactions. It will annoy people, I think. But I'm okay with playing the odd game that's like this, and I wanted to see where you fell on that, because comedy can be a double-edged sword. You get it wrong and you get absolutely criticised for it. You get it right, and it's the best thing since, I don't know, The Office, UK version, by the way.
I mean, it's humorous. I wouldn't say it's like gave me belly laughs. There were times when it sort of just made me go like a little bit like maybe sort of just like smiled to myself. But it's not, it is humorous. It's fine. Sometimes it does border on like either obvious or like unobvious humour, and it can be a little bit irritating. But I was fine with it. Like it fits in, as you say. You kind of take it for what it is. You go. It's a bit like Tales of the Borderlands, where it's kind of like there's a bit of humour in there, and it's okay. Like it's not taking itself too seriously at all times. And I enjoyed it. Like it on the whole, I thought it fitted in well. And I like playing something that didn't take itself too seriously, because coming off the back of God of War, which is obviously it's got humour, but it's a serious game.
Yeah.
It was nice to play something a little bit less serious, I think, and light-hearted.
I agree. Well, you mentioned about the partners that you can call in throughout the game to aid you. What did you think of that? I mean, it's a pretty easy mechanic to kind of drop in, but as they add more of them, you can cycle through them. And actually, what I found towards the back end of the game is I was cycling through them and just doing massive damage all of a sudden. And then by the time I'd got back to the first one, that was ready. I could almost I at some point was just using those to smash the absolute bits out of some of these enemies, particularly the higher enemy ones. How did you find that mechanic kind of fitted in with it? And it does add another layer of complexity, because you go from just attacking to dodging to parrying to having one companion to having one ally you can call into 2 to 3, and they all have different perks and whatnot. How did you find that in the end? Or was it just at the point where you're like, this is getting too complex as it is, I need to just focus on it in this person in the head?
No, well, I just used to just spam them all in like every 5-10 seconds, basically, and just do damage. And
they were highly effective. So.
They were. This is what I mean. I found a tactic, and I was like, right, call these in, get rid of all the shields, do everything. And continually, I was just spamming LT, get them in, and then I'd just be going around just bashing people with my X, and I'm going bam, 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 constantly. And that's what I mean. I found a way to kind of not have to be too worried about the mechanics, and it's kind of like I didn't want to get snarled up thinking, okay, I need to put him over there, her over there. Like I was just like, get them all in and worry about it after. That's pretty much how I went with it. I mean, I'm fine with it, but I just found myself, because it chucks so much crap at you, especially towards the end. I was just chucking it all in as quickly as I could. Basically spamming it. That was the way I dealt with it.
I did as well. It's a useful tool to have. And you mentioned there is like certain enemies that have shields or are immune until you can use a specific companion's like specialist power. I think one of them's got wind, for example, so you would use that on specific enemies that were weak to that or that had a shield up, and then you could start attacking them and do damage. I think one of the things that consistently frustrated me throughout the game was these kind of forced parry sections where there's an entire combat encounter dedicated to that, and you have to learn. And what I mean by these, I'll try and describe it. It's hopefully not too tricky. Sometimes you can parry in the game whenever you want. An enemy might attack you, and you might be able to parry and do some damage back on them. However, there are areas where the game will sort of go into this freeze mode. You'll go sort of one-on-one with that enemy, and they will present you a beat to follow. And it won't be the tss, it might be da-da-da-da-da. That could be what they present you. Then it's your turn to copy that exact beat in time to parry their attack. If you successfully do it, you can kill the enemy off, and it'll get rid of them. And then you've got to go da-da-da-da-da. I don't know whether I was just bad at this, but some of these I just couldn't do. Towards the back end, it got easier. Again, that maybe it's just because I finally started to get it. But like I said, there's one encounter in particular that's just dedicated to this whole mechanic, basically. Yeah. And I found that highly infuriating. And especially in the early goings of that parrying section, I found it annoying because I could never get it. And it's an opportunity just to get rid of a strong enemy quite easily. So I don't know whether this sounds pathetic. Was it input lag? Probably not. But I just don't think they just felt off to me. I don't know if you had the same experience or were actually okay with those forced sort of parrying sections, because they're mostly presented as an opportunity to kill something off early, but you squander it and you feel done by it because they're still there lurking, piling shit on you.
Yeah, I did sort of struggle with it a little bit earlier on, but I think after that encounter that's dedicated to it, I think I did enough there
Right.
that after that I got basically used to it.
Yeah.
But I didn't enjoy it, and I think one of my frustrations throughout the game is the volume of what I would consider quick time events.
Yeah, yes, there's a lot. Yeah, they are quick time events.
Yeah, it's like I just don't enjoy that. I find it like the most basic form of gaming mechanic, and it just doesn't engage me. So yeah, I didn't enjoy that. I think I mean, I understand why it's there, and it asks you to do so. I mean, it's a bit like Guitar Hero at times, where you're doing things like in line with a beat that it shows you at the bottom as it goes along and stuff like that. And you know, you have to hit certain buttons by doing things with quick time events in a certain order. And I was just like, why am I just want to hit the fucking button and get on to the next encounter. Like, why am I having to get snarled up here and do this 3 times?
Yeah.
Like, there were some things in between battles where I just found myself just getting a bit like,
get on with it.
Yeah, a little bit like, get on with it. Yeah.
Soured him.
It did a little bit. I even texted you about that, saying these fucking quick time events. I was like, I'm getting really wound up with it.
Indeed. I've got no more major points to discuss. Do you? Anything?
I think you've hit the nail on the head, really. I mean, I liked the environment. I liked, especially early on, I liked the battles. As the game went on, I increasingly just found it as a spam fest.
Yeah.
It chucked some different mechanics at you, to say, with enemies with different weaknesses, but because there's so much of it going on in these fight phases, I just found myself just being in spam mode. And on the final boss of the game, I was getting really annoyed. I was like, because to do that well, you have to be good at the mechanics, and I was like, I'm just not getting this. And in the end, I just went in full spam mode.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to stop trying to adjust my play style here. I'm just going to go full spam. Yeah. And that did it for me in the end. But I was like, I'm almost annoyed with the game and myself a little bit that it made me resort to that. Because I was like, is that a failing as me? Is that a failing of the game? Is it a bit of both? Is it, I don't know. But I never felt like I was properly in tune with the game. No. I think is a way to put it, and that's probably as much on me as it is on the game.
Yeah. I mean that's fair comment. Dimp Digital Gaming Gallery time.
Yeah.
What are we doing with this? Will it get in via your personal exhibition? You've got a chance. No.
I mean, there's nothing wrong.
90 out of 100 here.
I just didn't.
Aggregate Open Critic score. 94 critic reviews. Yeah.
I mean, I can accept a game has done well critically, and I can understand why. Right? I'd probably say if you're a specific type of gamer, you'll love this.
Yeah.
But for my personal taste and for what I enjoyed, I'd say, the first half of it. I enjoyed the humour and the overall presentation of the game. But as it went on and I got locked in the cycle, I kind of just wanted to just get it done. And I think that the second half of the game is the weaker part of it. And I think that's just because it just becomes a little bit chuck shit at you.
Overindulgent.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
I feel it was like overly... As soon as I understood how it was going to have to work in going through all the bosses, I was a bit like, I know the work that's ahead of me here, but I wanted to finish it. But at the same time, I found it a little bit grating.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tricky one. I mean, I had issues with it, as I've communicated here. But there's something that was drawing me back in. It is stylish. It is energetic, pulsating at times. Has this kind of panache to it. It swaggers. It does. It's one of these games that kind of just swaggers to its own beat of the drum, for lack of a better term. It really does just say, here's what we're doing. Here's the style we're going for. And that was appealing throughout most of the game. I did only occasionally, I should say, feel like I got it. And it was in rare occasions, and probably wasn't in the moment. It wasn't because it was the back end of the game and I was in the moment for the last third of it. It was random. Like, suddenly it would come together and then it wouldn't. And I'd be like, I don't even know if what I'm doing here is correct. But what I will say is that, it's stylish, energetic, it's pulsating. I've got problems with it. It has the panache that was kind of drawing me in. It has cool moments. It is unique. But I was able to get through it. Yes, there were stressful moments. But I get stressed with nearly every single game I play.
Yeah.
I don't know one game that I've sat there and not gone at some point during the playthrough for whatever reason, because it's winding me up or because I thought it should have been finished 2 hours ago. And the fact that I could get through it, once I finished it, I was relieved, I'll be honest. And the length, maybe it was a little bit overindulgent. I've mentioned the problems of the pacing. It needs some more zip outside of combat. And the pacing's a little bit all over the place, but it's a cool game. It's a high quality game as well, I'll say. That's also something that we didn't really talk about. It's a high quality game. And I could get through it. I got through it. I'm glad I got through it. I'm going to give it a bronze because I think that there's something there. There was something there for me. It's not going to probably make a Game of the Year list at all, but it is a high quality game. It's extremely stylish. It does have a unique kind of flavour to it. And either you'll get on with it or you won't. But even if you don't get on with it, you can find a way through. There is a path through this. And it may come with frustration. But as soon as I gave up the ghost of trying to be perfect at it, that kind of eased a lot of the annoyances I had. And there were moments I got stuck, obviously. But again, I look at other games and I get stuck. Unless it's a narrative-based game where there's literally no progression blockers, I always get stuck at some point. And you think, this is just bullshit. And that's the term that usually comes out of my gob. But that's not unique to this game. That's pretty much common across every game I end up playing. So I was able to get through it. And I thought, yeah, you know what? I'm glad that it's getting all the plaudits from a selfish perspective, because I like Tango Gameworks because they made The Evil Within. So I hope this gives them a lease of life. But for myself, I think a nice solid bronze for a high quality action game. If you're into these games, I think you'll have a great time with it, personally. In most cases, I had a decent enough time. I enjoyed my time with it, and a bronze feels appropriate to drop it in there. Try and get some respect on that bronze tier, despite the criticisms. But then again, I think we spend most of our time criticising games, and then it's easy to do, isn't it? But there's something there. There is something there. When the flow happens, it's exhilarating, and there's not really much else like it. High quality, cocky game. People won't like the cockiness of it, but I don't mind that now and again. My only concern going forward, I think we're going to get Hi-Fi Rush 2 at some point.
Right.
And my concern is they go, cool, they want more of that. Here's a 25-hour version of Hi-Fi. And I'm like, no. Don't take these scores that you've got as a signal that we want 30-hour experiences like this. No. 10 hours, 15 hours tops, Tango. Or better yet, put all your resources into The Evil Within 3, because that's what we really want, don't we? That's what I want, selfishly. Game's a bit like Baby Driver, isn't it? Where it tries to be a bit like that.
I haven't seen Baby Driver.
Oh, you know. All right. What about the pub scene in Shaun of the Dead?
Yeah.
I actually read that's where they got the inspiration from for that one.
Yeah.
But
that makes sense.
Yeah.
It is. I think if I'd have played, if the second half of the game I enjoyed as much as the first, it'd get a bronze.
Yeah.
But I really found the second half of the game challenging. Not from it was challenging at times from a gameplay perspective, but even just from a engagement perspective, I was getting a bit tired of it. And I think that is what has prevented it from me getting bronze. It's
fair. I mean, I think there's some people out there that will play us and completely be in that boat. It is a bit of a. I mean, the aggregate score does not represent this at a 90. That's insanely high, and well done for getting that. But for me, it's definitely a few rungs down from that. But nonetheless, as an overall package, was I glad I finished it and played through it? I think yes. It has a lot to offer. And it could have even more to offer for those that are fully engaged and able to get into the flow of what it's requiring. But I was able to get through it, so it is what it is. People will fall in love with this game, I have no doubts, and there's going to be other people that are closer to your opinion and some that are like me, where it's like, yeah, it's good, but it goes into the bronze category for me, so it sneaks its way in. Logan craps on Phil and a first-party game once again. The man who plays everything on Xbox, he's crapping on Phil's library of games that are being shipped out to him.
I don't see it. If I'm trying to be a bit more stricter with this dumping ground attitude.
I agree, yeah.
I don't want to just go, oh, it was all right, so it can go in. I'm kind of like, if I just want to try and be a bit stricter, I think. And like with Pentiment as well, not getting in. Of course, spoilers, you can't say that. But there's a couple of games where I'm like, the second half is spoiling the first.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, if I haven't enjoyed half the game,
how can it get in?
Yeah.
I want people to put more respect. Do you know what? When I finished the game, I was on a bit of a high, and initially in my head I was like, that's silver territory. And then as the hours went on, I was like, it's probably not. But this is actually a good example for me to put in the bronze to show that it isn't a dumping ground, because the quality of this game could earn itself a bit higher. But then I spent 40 minutes crapping on it, so I don't know where I stand now, but that's where I when I was analysing it in my head over the days and the hours, that's where I ended up on. So I think it may have got a bit of a raw deal here, but I think that's what people come for. They like their favourite games to be crapped on, and as they should be. But there you go. Anyway, Hi-Fi Rush gets itself a bronze for myself. Logan puts it in the bin, so those that are wandering around the gallery can see it. Stuff that goes in the bin is never rectified, by the way. It just goes in the bin outside, and then, as we know, every Friday the bin men come along and take it away. So that'll be it. Unless just one quick question. I know we're overindulging ourselves here, much like Tango Gameworks did at times. But Hi-Fi Rush 2 does drop on Game Pass in 3 years' time. Does it get picked up and played, or is it just fool me once, shame on you? No, is it? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
It depends what it's offering. I think, and it would be largely the same, but I think I wouldn't want it just to be an extension of the story. I'd have to see what other mechanics, or whether you've got, different musical beats. So what would it be offering? I think is the key.
More of the same, I suspect.
Yeah, I know. I mean, in which case it probably would get dropped.
Fair enough. Well, that's the end of this edition of Idle Game Chat. Hope you enjoyed us talking to you about our video game lives. Twitch.tv/Dimp Digital is a place to go if you actually want to hear more of Logan, because he is often in Hall's Warzone or whatever multiplayer game he's playing in his party lurking, along with some other colourful characters. So if you want to hear Hall and Pee-wee arguing throughout the day, that's usually a good stream to pop into. Twitch.tv/Dimp Digital. If you follow us there, you can catch up on that. And I still haven't got into my schedule of streaming once a week. Keep putting it off, so you may get that as well. Also, if you've got Twitch Prime, you can just sub to the channel for free on your side, and we'll get half a beer out of it, potentially, after all the taxes and stuff have come off it. Probably a quarter beer now, but we'll take it. I mean, you're probably giving it to some massive Twitch stream that doesn't even give a fuck. So perhaps take your Prime subscription and give it to us. I don't know. Anyway, nothing more for us to say here other than thanks for your time and ta-da.
This was a Dimp Digital production.